Eli, we're done. Can you make sure you do the punk rock one?
Let's go!
Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome back to the Primas podcast, your favorite podcast in the whole wide world. I am Cindy, and I'm here with my beautiful cousin Jessica.
Hi Prima, how are you? Happy St. Patrick's Day. Today is St. Patrick's Day, so I'm wearing my green necklace. And since I'm not drinking green beer today, I'm drinking green coffee. To keep the spirit alive.
That is very creative.
Thank you.
What spirit?
St. Patrick's Day. Pre-baby, I would be drinking green coffee today. I would have started at like 7 a.m., regardless of the day of the week.
Thing? Green coffee is a thing?
I said green beer. I would have been drinking green beer all day, but since that was old Jess, new Jess drinks green coffee on St. Patrick's Day.
Keep telling yourself that, Jess.
Wow, this is a very interesting conversation. So with that, I'm gonna introduce our little special guest neighbor, Primex of the podcast. He's usually here. He has our back metaphorically and also physically. He is the big Barajas brother. He's like the oldest one in our family, and we're just like, hail, O wise one. So Robert, my oldest brother, is here. Yay!
Yay!
Once again, I was invited to the Primas podcast, which is always a humbling experience. And since it's St. Patty's Day, I thought, oh man, I didn't wear my green thong, but I got the greenies.
Oh, I see here.
It's not a big deal. I gotta go change them for quarters because we gotta wash.
Oh, I see. You're flexing your rent money to us?
Yep. Somebody's got to watch the chonies.
Hi, cuz. Welcome back. You haven't been here all season, too. We missed you.
Missed you guys, but I'm loving some of the episodes that you guys are bringing together. I noticed my better half was also on the podcast. Can't wait for tomorrow. That's gonna be awesome. Definitely the ratings are gonna go up for that one. And it's always a pleasure to be with you girls. Thank you for the invite.
Spoiler alert, we were all crying through the entire episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it was good though.
I'll wait.
It was a good one.
Can't wait. I'm excited.
So today we are going to talk about.
It's Britney, bitch.
It's Britney, bitch. It's Britney, bitch. That's my Britney Spears impersonation. Did it sound just like her?
Wow, it did. I thought you had like a recording. That was you?
It was like so me.
That did sound like a recording. Really good job, sis.
Thank you. I always say that I would make it past like the first level tier of American Idol. I feel like I can confidently get through the first one, get the ticket.
Yeah, you just proved it with that recording. It sounded like it, but it was genuinely you. So that just proves right there how amazing you are.
Yeah. So, if there's anybody listening that needs to sign somebody, I'm your girl. Okay. So, have you guys seen the Britney Spears documentary? Okay. And it was very heartbreaking for me. What are your thoughts on it? Because I feel like we need to bring attention to this matter. And we're going to get deeper with it. We're going to apply it to our real world. But I think Britney Spears is right here in the heart. I grew up with her. I'm a 90s, 2000 child. And so, yeah, what did you guys think about it?
I couldn't believe how I did not know she was under this conservatorship. I had no idea. I also grew up with Britney Spears. I remember, I think she's like maybe your age, Cindy. So she's like a year or two older than me. And I remember growing up listening to her music and just relating to her. I remember when she shaved her head and thinking how intense that was. But this documentary, I was like 18 when that happened. So I didn't know what was going on. But looking back at it, no, I didn't. I remember thinking like, whoa, this is like a cry for help in some shape, way, or form. And I was only 18, but I didn't think too deeply in like the reason why she might have escalated it that far. And I think to this day, it is a cry for help. And after watching that documentary, it's sad how, in a lot of ways, she's controlled.
Well, for me, it was a lot of little things.
Controlled.
I remember kind of going through it as it was happening, and at that time, I wasn't so sensitive to like paying attention to the undertones of what was going on. It was just kind of like go with the flow. I wasn't really big on like social media and like kind of following what's going on. I mean, it's whatever we saw in the news. He was hospitalized, the shaving of the head. I mean, that was everywhere. But it was, I mean, what struck out to me was the dad who wasn't in the picture in the beginning. Wasn't in the picture whatsoever, and then all of a sudden some people were making comments about that the dad was just like, my daughter's gonna buy me a boat or something like that. So he was just really, when is this gonna pan out? And then all of a sudden a person that really didn't care too much for her career decides, I'm gonna be the conservator, comes out of the blue. And there's a lot of like little missing tidbits that, why is it so hard to change the conservator? Um, that was kind of tough. They kind of push these kids out there to just kind of perform and not really protect them from anything. Just kind of putting them out there and expecting them to kind of be the breadwinner for them. But that has some like failed businesses or something. So really wasn't too much of a of a positive influence on her daughter's career. So that kind of stuck with me.
Yeah. I think the worst part was when I would look back and think of all of those times that the tabloids made like a big deal about stuff. Like she shaved her head, she attacked a cameraman with an umbrella, I don't know, anytime in the documentary it explains what happened, and what would happen was that she got her kids taken away she had no protection. Like she hadn't, as she was coming up, she never had protection. Like, I don't know. And she seems still very vulnerable, like very nice and trying to do things, not try to ruffle any feathers. Like, I feel bad because I feel like she doesn't have, like, her mom or her dad. I mean, her dad's doing her super dirty, but like, even I feel like as a mom, I'd be ready. And I'm being honest, I'd be ready to go to jail over any shit where, my daughter's like being abused. And how Britney Spears is being abused is that, yeah, she's a childhood star. And like all of these childhood stars we've seen, they're always so bad. They're always either like, once they become adults, they're either homeless, they have like severe substance abuse issues, a lot of mental health issues. And all people do is make money off of them. Like the more someone spirals out of control, the more attention it grabs. And that's what it said in the documentary. Like, people were fighting over taking pictures of her because they were worth so much money. And she's over here not being able to see her kids. And each time she would try to go visit her kids, and Kevin Federline, the dad, he wouldn't like open up for her or whatever. That's every time she had an episode, a situation where I'm like, oh, it would have been way more different for me. Just to think that someone has that power over me and my child as a mom, it's so heartbreaking. And she can't even make any decisions off of that because of the conservatorship. And that means that her dad and like a group of other lawyers or whatever own her. And the reason why she signed up for that even was because there was a trade-off of, if you go through with this, you get to see your kids more, because now someone else is going to be responsible over who you are. And that's why she went through with it. And then it ended up being like, I would say even worse, because at the end of the day, she's an adult now. She can't do anything. It's so sad. I feel so bad for her.
Yeah, and the tabloids, I kind of feel like most of the judgment that was being done on her was kind of like what was being splashed on magazines. It's like, oh, she's having a meltdown, so it's on a magazine, so she must be having a meltdown. And you know, imagine going through a discussion with your baby's dad, and that being in the public's eye, and then like the slap in the face was these paparazzi guys was like, well, she never really told us that she doesn't want us there. And I'm like, she's crying. Her trying to break, damage your car with an umbrella. That's not her telling you that she doesn't want you around. And so they
After
try to, I
saying,
just,
please stop, please, you guys, please stop. Like, that's how nice she was. She wasn't even, she was just like, please, you guys, please.
and
And then she like
that's
attacked with the umbrella because they wouldn't leave her alone. She's coming down from, I can't see my kids. Oh,
yeah, that was tough. That was tough. But it's that whole family members exploiting the whole, the old story of famous people being exploited by their families. And I guess Britney Spears was a victim of that. It's unfortunate.
That's a fairly new term for me, conservative.
so,
Yep.
mhm.
I've never really heard that term. And to be honest, it's fairly recent. There was a movie I was going to watch last weekend with my sisters, and it talked just about this. Like, it was a movie. It came out on Netflix, but it was an elderly lady. Like, they try to take advantage of. And I didn't end up watching it, finish watching it, but I saw the beginning. So that was like the first time I had heard that term. And then now in this documentary, and it blows my mind how there's such a system or such a legal aspect where someone can have control and rights. Not, and I thought the term was power of attorney, but even that is not even as intense as this conservatorship is.
If I'm not mistaken, I think conservatorship is gives them the right to handle both their mental health and their finances. So it's complete conservative. It's like a complete um um allowing the individual that's the conservator to manage all aspects of the individual's life, where I think a power of attorney is more legally
Mm.
just like legal term, like if you own property or you have money, that's where but I mean, conservatorships have been around for a long time, and they at times there are opportunities where you can see a conservatorship really help someone if somebody's dealing with some severe um mental health concerns, and it's obvious that they can get exploited, which this conservatorship was established to protect her from that. Now, I don't know, again, this is just cynical me thinking, well, who's to say that the conservatorship is doing the right thing, and it's the public who wants to kind of spin it in a different direction. I don't know. I think, and then it comes into like legal terms. How much information should the public know? Like, remember that lawyer that was trying to defend Brittany was talking about, um he thought that she was capable of handling her own finances, and he kind of felt that she didn't necessarily need a conservator anymore at that point going forward. And so the judge said, oh well, we have this documentation that says the opposite, and but that he wasn't going to allow him to see it. So there's that information, but again, that's how much of that information should be let so the public be aware of. When you deal with a lot of money,
Exactly. I
it can
was just
get
going to
really
say that.
crazy because how is the conservator isn't supposed to be able to make a living out of being someone's conservator. And Brittany's dad and that lawyer were actually asking for raises because through the conservatorship she was actually making more money, and so they kind of felt like we deserve a raise. So they were treating Brittany's conservatorship more of like a business than really protecting what her best interests were. And so I kind of felt, when you're dealing with like money that some of us might never see, you kind of, people start acting funny, and even the law starts, kind of being twisted in a different way. It's like almost different levels to what you can and can't do when you have a certain amount of money that you're playing with. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
So I think it's important to talk about the situation with Britney Spears because it's going on throughout, like it's always gone on in Hollywood. There's a lot of different childhood stars um, that have conservatorships, which is, like basically their parents, because they're childhood stars, like, or they're child stars, their parents take over their finances and then they go well into like their adulthood. And, a lot of these people are just using their kids to make money off of them. And sometimes, it is like a positive experience. Like, I think I saw Selena Gomez. They were struggling, and so she got into acting. But I think she's also struggled, and she decided, like, no, I want to help my family out. But like, we don't think about this like childhood labor or child labor. Like in other countries, there's a lot of different rules against childhood labor. And when you're a child star, you're working really late nights. You're working you're a business. You as a person is a business, and if your family's not prepared, which most people that go into this type of money aren't, and so they're not able to manage it correctly. And a lot of these other people get involved because they get a cut, right? Like the lawyers get involved, the representatives, the managers, and they get a cut of this child, whoever they're managing or whatever. And so there's something very dangerous in play deprivation, like child development. There, like when you don't allow somebody to develop how they're supposed to and they're meant to work. One huge example of how that's a horrible train wreck is like Michael Jackson. I think everybody knows him and his story, and that's exactly what's happening. I think not exactly, but it's very similar to like Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, Macaulay Culkin, all of these kids that were so big at one time, and then all of a sudden it goes downhill. It's because their family was like putting that pressure on, like you're how we survive. And I think that's fucked up. Like even if there is a big need, like there's no way I'm ever going to put my child in that type of situation. Like I'd protect my child. In these situations you can't protect them.
I think the biggest proof, like in our recent times, I mean, Macaulay Culkin at the end of the day ended up being really resilient, and he was able to overcome, his demons or whatever he was going through, when he was a child star. And now you kind of look at him, he looks, he talks. I've heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast and a couple other interviews that he's done, and he seems to have been able to rebound. But we talk about somebody like Amy Winehouse, who, if you've been able to, if you watch the documentary, you kind of see how her dad continuously exploited her, and even to the very end, um instead of knowing that she was dealing with substance abuse, and she really just needed him to be her dad and her protector. He was inviting paparazzi on private trips, and even to the very end. So we look at, I think, back to people like Lindsay Lohan and other child stars that struggle with substance abuse. I was also looking at like the Demi Lovato um situation, and I always wonder, like, who's put in place to provide that support or even look for that support. You have a lot of yes people in people's lives, and there isn't anybody there to kind of. But even then, like, let's just say that there were people, you know at least on Demi Lovato's case, she was just pushing people that were knowing her away. And so it was almost like, if you yes me to death. So it's kind of like those hanger-ons wanted to continuously be a part of that lifestyle. So, you know, keep it going, because the other option was she kicked me out of her crew or whatever, and then I don't have access to that lifestyle. So it's kind of, I would say, the adult parents, the people that got them into it, to be able to kind of step in if possible. But
Like, yeah, I hear what you guys are both saying, and it's kind of like a trend. It's a pattern that we keep seeing. And when I was doing my research, I came across Amanda Bynes, and hers triggered schizophrenia. And we know schizophrenia, we know people have that gene, and it's their environment that triggers it. And look how she's spiraling, and she's under a conservatorship, which I also didn't know. And she went under that voluntarily. Her mom has that. And then I think of Shia LaBeouf, who's also a childhood star. And
I'm just gonna say his name.
He suffers from PTSD. And he was never in war. He was never what we associate PTSD with, with veterans. He was a childhood star, and he's suffering from that. And it's just like, we see them as adults now, and we're scrutinizing them and shedding them in this terrible light. But it's like, what are we always talking about? That childhood trauma. And no one's protecting them. No one's protecting these kids. Everyone's protecting the adults and the money and their interests. But where's the professional team that's going to protect these kids and their innocence? They don't know what's best for them. We're always saying that. And now that I have a daughter, when people are like, oh, let your daughter do that, like she knows. And I'm like, no, she doesn't. She's 3 years old. I know what's best for her. But if she were in that environment, yeah, I would want like professionals around her who are going to guide her and her emotions and her mental health. I would want that for my daughter. But it's too much of a trend that we're just seeing with these childhood stars. And I had no idea Britney Spears was this deep.
With Shia LaBeouf, he a part of his, when he went into rehab, some of the homework that he was doing was to kind of journal, and that's where he came up with that the movie Honey Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And that shows a lot about
his dad.
His life growing up with his dad, and the experiences that he had, how he was exposed to a lot of stuff at a really young age. And it's, when you ask that question of who steps in to protect these kids, well, their parents are there. There's a parent there, and it's when it comes down to that, you're separating two different things. It's like, well, it's a parent, but maybe they're not parenting to my liking. But who's to say that their parenting, their parenting style, who's gonna be there to protect and police their parenting style? You know what I mean? So
I wanna bring it to right now. Like, how does this apply? How can we apply this to what's going on with child stars, or what has been going on, and bringing it into like, how do we apply this to our real world? And I think kids are playing less now. Kids are, because of technology, like, and it's moving so quick that we're like, how do we do it? Because I think it is cool that our kids are like, super invested in technology, but there's no balance, right? That's what we keep running into. Like, now we're addicted, and then we just put our kids on it because it's easy for us, and it's hard not to. But we're not allowing kids to play how we used to play. And even if it's not just technology, like, I feel like there's less kids playing outside, or people compliment my daughter's like physical abilities in the playground, and it's like, it's not a special crazy situation. Most kids, that's what we're born for, like, is to move and play, but we don't play. And then as soon as you become an adult, it's like, forget it, right? Like, you have to put your inner child away. And so I kind of wanted to talk about, like, when we see people making money off of like YouTube kids, like, there's a lot of YouTube kids on that are producing money, maybe not at the level of Michael Jackson and Lindsay Lohan and Britney Spears, but they're still, to me, it's the same thing, because they're not allowed to pray freely, play freely. I said pray. And yeah, I think we're also like missing on that point. We're not really playing, and we're not allowing our kids to play because we don't want them to get hurt. And so there's that other part of like hypersensitivity, where we're so sensitive that it's like, I don't want to expose my child to anything. And then when those kids become adults, it's little stressors are very hard for them to manage. And I was reading this article that said the long-term impacts of play deprivation during early childhood development includes isolation. So the person's like isolated. These could be some characteristics. Depression, reduced self-control. And I think of people who are violent or angry and who kind of struggle and they kind of react in that level really quickly. I think, especially if they put themselves in like bad situations for themselves, they don't know how to control themselves. And they're suffering because we say spiraling and, like spiral, and they're just going so deep into their thoughts and whatever they're going through that it puts them in like harder and harder binds. And it's like, that person doesn't know how to control their behavior, because if they did, they wouldn't be suffering all these consequences. And I say suffering because I feel like, a lot of us are just beat down by life, and then we end up suffering as adults. And then everyone else, what we do is we mock those people, we ostracize, we stop talking to them, we take away love from them, we take away, we start judging them like, you're not great, instead of saying, I wonder what that person's childhood might have been like. And if we knew, because children are so vulnerable, if we knew most people that do have issues as adults is 100% correlated with their childhood experience. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
And I think that the thing that makes it even more difficult, especially right now during this pandemic where children can't go back to school or don't have access to the regular things they did, especially 0 to 5 when they're still in preschool. A lot of their education, a lot of that development comes from play. And so to not have at least that basic socialization is even more, devastating for children. And that's the generation that's going to grow into go into elementary school with a lot of the concerns, the red flags that you were mentioning, sister. And that combination of low, not a lot of stimulation, social stimulation, the advances in technology where it's an easy way of distracting them, are definitely going to make the situation even worse for children. And I don't know what the answer is. I think it is definitely going to take, us as parents to just kind of disconnect and find a way to be outside for a couple hours, or do things, go out. We try to do our camping trips, and we try to do things that kind of switch it up for the kids, but these are things that we do traditionally during the summer. And so it really is going to ask us as parents to just kind of disconnect, turn appliances off, and just be outside, do something outside.
And I think the biggest thing is that it's finding a balance.
Yeah, and like what I was gonna say with that is, I hear you both. It is really tough, and the reality is, a lot of these kids are just like Cindy said. They like my daughter already knows how to work YouTube, and I put her in one, and she always finds her way to these certain shows on YouTube, or like these little kids who are playing, and I'm like, I don't get how she would rather see these kids play with these toys instead of her. And she, if I allowed her, she can sit there for hours probably. But it's like, it's trying to control that aspect. So one, I would say, like, don't buy them a tablet. I don't think there's a need for any kid unless they need it for school purposes. I wouldn't conform in buying her a tablet. So that's one way of trying to balance it out. There's no reason for her to just sit down. She's not going to have my phone all the time, because either we're using it for music, or she just doesn't need my phone. And then the second thing would be what Cindy was saying about the YouTube stars and all that. It's getting worse. We're looking at the adults who were our childhood stars, who were our age, and now they're adults, and we see how bad it is. Now let's fast forward to these kids. Gen Z is the generation after millennials. We've seen so many studies already done, because they're in middle school, and what it's doing to them with social media, how they're much more depressed. This is the most depressed group of kids in their middle school ages than ever. And I thought middle school was tough. Imagine with social media there, and how much more harsh and cruel people can be. We see how brave they can be behind their phones. And imagine going to school with them the next day. And then imagine messing with their psychology. They're going through what do they go through when they're teenagers again? Puberty. Their hormones are running wild. And social media is, if we don't have caution now, I don't see it. If we think, oh, it's not that bad, then again, we're not paying attention to the trend. We're not paying attention to the patterns of people. Michael Jackson was your era, right, Robert? You're like 4 decades older than us. We seen it then. Now we see it now in our generation and then the future generation. So it's things like that we have to pay attention to. And I don't think it's getting better. And that's the sad part. If anything, it's getting worse. There's this family I follow on, not follow, but I've seen them and their kids right now. I Googled them. They're like the Ace family. They're getting paid. Their kids are getting paid like 20 G's per post. And they have 3 kids. And their 3 kids each have their own IG.
But see, you're talking about a generational thing, Jess, because it didn't start with the kids. It started with the parents.
Mm-hmm.
So the parents started that pattern. They noticed that it was money. So then they just started saying, well, let's continue the exploitation. Now these guys have their kids and you're saying that each individual one has their thing. I mean, I don't want to say that it's a lost cause, but if and I don't follow them. I see that my girls once in a while will be on looking at something, and I kind of feel like I don't understand why that's a thing, but maybe again because I'm from the 1800s, like you were saying, Jessica, and so it's to me it's these people. I don't know. Maybe they have talent. I don't know whether they finish school, whether their families have businesses they could have gone into. I don't know, but it's just when you're making that kind of money, it blurs the line of reality. Like, why am I gonna work hard to make less money? When I can just sit here and record myself and get likes and I make money just by living my life to some extent.
But then it's going back to what we're seeing. No one's protecting these kids. They're exploiting their 3 kids. And when everyone's like, oh, well, it's fine. I'm monitoring it. But it's like, are you? Or like, let's look at these childhood celebrities. Let's look at them. And you tell me, if we were to ask and interview these parents, do they have the best interest of their kids by doing that? And then it goes back to like Britney Spears' dad. He thinks he's doing it right.
But does he? We don't know. Like
exactly, you're right.
If you
It's
were to
just
open up the
assumption.
finances and you kind of look at whether that money is going strictly, for the best interest of Britney Spears. I mean, I don't know. We don't know. There's a lot that we don't know, and it's when the tabloids and when the laws can make things really really vague. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like it's it's a fine line. Like, how can you? I mean, this has happened since parents were able to have since I mean, you probably won't know who this, but
Child labor.
Shirley Temple. I mean, yeah, child labor was obviously we cut that out to some extent, but now it's like with everything, we just rebrand things, like incarceration, like mental health. We just rebrand it to be something totally different that fits in a pretty box of what we consider acceptable.
Mhm.
And so that's what makes it really difficult, because how are you going to police parents from parenting their children? It's almost like it's unethical. It's almost like you're working in the with the homeless population. It's how can you tell somebody they can't live in the streets? It's the same with parenting. How can you tell somebody how to parent their kid? And unless there are laws for agencies like that hire these actors to kind of be really strict on how much time these kids are acting, how much free time they get, if all of that stuff is in the contract, and kind of like there's a certain amount of hours that they can work, and there's these hours that go into work, and then there's these hours that go into them being able to live a normal life. Who's going to want to do that? There's money being lost if you create that, because the more energy you can squeeze out of a kid. And remember, there's a shelf life. You're not a lifelong Disney kid actor. You know what I mean? You get to a certain age and you become Britney Spears, and you're no longer like a Musketeer or Mickey Mouse Club, whatever she was a part of,
Yeah.
and all these other actors that were in those Disney shows. They become adults and they can no longer be that little kid, and so they have to grow. And so they need to, and because being able to be in these shows makes a lot of money. You need to pump those shows out as much as you can, because once they hit puberty, that's another generation. We don't even know if they're going to be able to, if they're going to be marketable at that age. And when money's involved, it just makes it really difficult, and a lot of a lot of safety nets that we would put for children go out of the window because there's too much money to be made. And that's
And we talk about child labor and working crazy hours and having people like dictate what you're going to do, whether you can play or not. And the one thing that we haven't talked about, which is really huge among Hollywood, and I think we haven't mentioned TikTok, but like there's a lot of like younger kids on TikTok, and um, sexual exploitation. We haven't talked about how there's so much horrible shit going on with regards to kids being boys, like little boys and little girls. But you can imagine how like with Britney Spears in the documentary, there's this older guy, he's maybe like 80, and he's like a host, and he's saying, so do you have a boyfriend, to this like 8-year-old girl. And she like, and she's like, no. And he goes, well, what about me? Like, right. Oh, I would have ran up
no
there.
One there to protect her.
There was nobody there to protect her, because I would have finished it. I would have
to be like, we're done.
I would have made a statement. Yeah. Oh, like it was just horrible to see how she grew up. No one was there to protect her. Kids are very vulnerable. We should, all as people, feel that we should protect kids. And what we do is we're so mean, we're so judgmental, and then they're teenagers. And then like, I remember Justin Bieber, he used to get a lot of shit. People were always, he's younger. I never really got into his music or nothing, but I just felt bad because he was a kid, and grown people, like on the radio, on TV, everybody was always talking shit, making fun of him. And I was like, that's horrible. Like, that's just so sad. I don't even like his music, but that's the fact that someone feels that they could do that to somebody else. It's because there are no consequences, or these people become so larger than life that the people around them are going to be like, yeah, it comes with it, or like, and it's just, it's just sad because they're so vulnerable. And so like the sexual exploitation piece, I don't know if you guys had anything to share on that.
I think you're right. I think you're right on. I mean, and then this is the United States. We have, I mean, we're still a little bit conservative when it comes to some extent, when it comes to sexuality and being able to sell a product a certain extent. We still have censors to some extent, but yeah, you go to these other countries where no, it's the money's to be made. The more sensational the reaction I can get from you is click, is money, is views, and views are money. And I mean, you've seen it with like the royal family. The more information that these paparazzis can get out of the royal family, it's ridiculous in in England. And so we see that behavior. Like, obviously, why would a grown man ask that to a little kid? Regardless, like, she's a kid, and why would she, and how is she expected to answer that? You know what I mean? It just becomes this thing where even parents that are put there to protect them, there's so much money to be made where you're just kind of like, you're no longer the caregiver, you're more of a manager, and the manager isn't the parent. You know what I mean? And there isn't any fine line to where I can stop this behavior. It just becomes so much money, and it's a business. You're a business. You're no longer a kid. You're a business. And whenever something that's innocent becomes a business, it becomes troublesome. We can do that. We can talk about the educational system. Once it became a business, then it wasn't accessible to everyone. We talk about water. The other day I was looking at it. I have these little bowls that are wrapped. They sell them at Walmart, and it's supposed to be water for your dog. Now they're selling water for your dog in little containers. I mean, it's just, if you can make money out of it, people will throw like reality and being common sense out the window, because, oh wow, yeah, you're right, I want to be a part of this trend. and you start doing crazy. Before you know it, you're in rehab, and like what was happening with Demi Lovato and a lot of these other child actors, that you could tell where they were already. I mean, the kid can't work 24 hours. What do? You create a substance that keeps them up longer. You create a substance that allows them to fog up the depression and not being able to live their childhood. And then, how do you expect them to function?
Just gonna say, I think that's like a whole other topic when it comes to like the sexual exploitation. Like even look at Michael Jackson dealt with that his whole life. Remember about those little boys and how he would have little kids sleep in his bed, and it's just sad.
Who allowed that?
I
Who
know, but
allowed
it,
that? You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
So,
who allows that? Who says, you know what? And that was a parent. Who says, you know what? I think it would be a good. I've been hearing all this buzz about him with little kids. I think it'd be good for me to let him spend the night there. It's just people start doing things that they wouldn't usually do when there's money involved, when there's that incentive. I can, I have access to a world that if it wasn't for this person, I would never have access to. And we act totally different. And we'll throw safety, we'll throw caution, we'll throw ethical out the window because of access.
mhm, yeah,
It's sad
I was
because
going to say that Macaulay Culkin, in one of his interviews, can you hear me?
yeah.
Oh, in one of his interviews, he said that he had nightmares for a really long time about an old man chasing him, like during Christmas time or something like that, because the whole movie and everything he practiced for was two kids trying to get a kid. And then it became this like American sensation and it made so much money. But for him, like when I was it was an interview, I was like, man, that's sad. I never would have thought of that, you know? But it's like he was the one, they were grilling him hours and like he had to do it, you know, and he was a little baby. And imagine all the takes, imagine just all the press that came with it afterwards and like just everything that he did afterwards. And he was just explaining how I just had never seen it that way either, you know? Like he was literally scared because it was such a huge thing for him. Like you have to pretend that these people are out to get you. And he's like, what's Christmas about? And so I thought that was like horrible. I wanted to also say that we keep saying that's so bad, but also we're the people, like this just speaks to how we are as humans. We're consuming that information. Like if you step back and look at the big picture, the reason why it got so big with Britney Spears is because people were consuming these tabloids. And now that has changed into social media. And we say all of these things, but instead of like saying, fine, my daughter's not allowed to watch these shows, or you know, because you don't want to keep them away from technology, also you want them to grow up with their era. And it just these situate we're all a collective, I feel, in a way, you know. So like this wouldn't work if we weren't receptive to it, if we weren't paying attention to it, all of this stuff wouldn't be going on. So I think it also speaks to how we are as a human society. Like we're so,
well, it
we
goes back
like to be entertained.
it goes back to being able to live access. Social media just created access. What the tabloids and the newspapers and TV, did before them, social media now does in an instant. I can see you have the shade room and all these other the TikToks and all that stuff gives me access to these people's worlds, people that we idolize, these people that we like their music, but it's there's that old saying, never idolize your artist. It's their art is great and they're good at what they do, but if you allow yourself to have access to their personal lives, you realize that the artist turns it off and they're a human being after that. And and that's what tabloids do. It gives us access to a lifestyle that we're not afforded, and we've liked it for generations. It's, if I can't travel to this country, I can see something on YouTube, or I can see something through social media that'll take me there. And these artists, people want to hang on. I can't physically hang out with you, but I could at least see how your life is going. And we kind of blur that line with that. And so it's
That's a good
I
point,
mean,
Rob. That's a good point what you were saying, because it's true. Back then we didn't have social media. We didn't have that. We didn't know what Britney Spears' life was. We were just being fed that. And now that we could log on to her social media, if I go on Instagram and search Britney Spears' account, I'll see her and I can make my own judgments off that. And I think that's how the movement got momentum, for that reason. Like you said, the access of social media. Now we're seeing her content and how she wants us, or what she wants to put out, not what a tabloid is going to do and misconstrue everything just to make $1 million. You know what I mean? So I think that has a lot to do with it, like the advancement of social media, how we have more access to these celebrities and we see them for being more human than not. Before we saw them as like, you know, these people.
I think it's a valid point what you're saying. Yeah, we get to see, and that's why this whole movement started, because they're trying to see, like, is she sending subliminal messages? But even then, like, if she truly has access to be able to express herself through her posts and stuff like that, wouldn't she have said, yes, this is going on, or no, this isn't going on, my dad isn't exploiting me? So there's a lot, like I'm saying, there's a lot that we don't know, and that's why I take information with a grain of salt. I mean, I'm not in her inner circle. I wish her the best. I hope that they're not exploiting her. I hope that we're all wrong and we were just all being nosy. But if you follow a trail, like, if there's always conspiracy theories. Look at that hotel in downtown LA.
Oh, the Cecil.
The Cecil. You had all these people that were talking about, there was ghosts, or there was like some crazy mystery. It was an inside job, and this and that. And then you come to find out that the poor lady had mental health issues, and it was nothing that everybody was, speculating for months. But people were getting in trouble, people were being questioned, and all because people wanted to create their own narrative. And that's the thing. Like, even with the whole Britney thing, it's like none of it is 100% unless you're her dad or you're Britney Spears. Nobody else knows the 100% truth unless you're in that inner circle that has access to that. But because of the lack of information, we can create our own narrative. Oh, well, her parents are exploiting her. I don't know, but you have to do more you have to be fair in your assumptions, and kind of, you can only take what you can get, and you can't go any further than that. And I think we create stories. And to talk to about my sister's point with, we continue to feed the need for these exploitive ways of being, with child exploitation, over sexualization of children. It there's definitely a need that we create, but at the same time, it's, even if that need wasn't there, we'd still create a narrative when we don't have information. So
we all need to, like, mind our business, huh?
100%.
That's like the moral of this whole thing. Like, this is big because we don't mind our business. We like the distractions, and then when it doesn't feel good, we're like, it's Google's fault, it's Facebook's fault, it's TikTok's fault.
What is social media? What is social media? Do you post on social media when you're having a bad day? When the makeup's running,
yeah,
when you got those extra pounds, do you post that? Do you post, the ghetto aspects of our life? No, we might say it, but do we really? The social media is there to put our best foot forward, where our hair is combed, we're in a nice clothing.
And even though that happens, it still exposes us, because we know, like you're just saying, we know that that's not real life. You're putting your best foot forward. You're not really going to highlight when you're having a bad time. And so people get addicted to that fantasy life where it's just like, oh, this person's having it better than me because they're so beautiful, or because they have money, or whatever, they travel, whatever our triggers are. And then, but it's still exposing us, because it's 100% human behavior. Like, we like the attention, and however we can get it.
And it's been happening. Entertainment has always dictated what we do. Back, before us, when black and white TV, there was a show we used to watch on Nickelodeon called Leave It to Beaver. Those, or even the I Love Lucy show, they both slept in separate beds. And it's like, oh, that's how parents are supposed to sleep. Who had separate beds?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? kids are supposed to act a certain way. We're supposed to have the white picket fence dog with 2.5 children. There was this whole belief that in order to live the American dream, you had to have that white picket fence, you had to have a certain kind of house, you had to have a certain amount of children, your wife was a housewife, and the dad was the only one that worked. And so social media and the entertainment has always dictated how we have to live our lives. We feed into it. And so you're talking about these families that that are exploiting their children. It and look at families that are paying attention to that. There's money to be made. Maybe I'll try that with my kid. And so you have all of these kids trying to make it, trying to get likes, doing the exact same thing. So it just created a new generation of exploitation, you know. So
Yeah.
that's the
I
difficult
feel
thing.
like the trend for women right now is everybody wants the over sexualized Brazilian butt lift type body. And
I
that's something that I've observed because in all of when you look at trends with like women,
Mm-hmm.
before it was like super thin, no curves, or before it was bigger, like that, back at some point that was like a sign of wealth, to be bigger was like you can eat, you have money, and that was considered sexually attractive. Um, but right now, that's the other trend with, that I'm seeing with my age group and with girls, and it's just like, why does everyone have the exact that, everyone's kind of like morphing into one thing. There's like we're no longer being unique. Like I'm gonna just do my own thing, and it's just like you can, but you're gonna be an outcast. You're gonna be canceled. No one likes you. You're not attractive, which doesn't matter. But that's the other trend that I see happening, where it's like all women want to look like the Kardashians, and I'm just like, that's interesting. It's fascinating. I'm not judging. It's crazy. It's how much influence.
It is influence. Well, because that's the American dream. How do I might not be famous, but I can at least act famous. You know what I mean? It breeds that. And it's been happening, you know, since the beginning of time. We've always somebody wore
Marilyn
something different.
Monroe.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I mean, look, you could even look at that. Marilyn Monroe's was, considered the most beautiful woman in her time. And
She was a size
for,
6 or 8 or
for
like
our
12.
standard, she's a regular
Mm-hmm.
person. You know what I mean? And so it blurs that line, and people are trying to continue to keep up with it. And because it's so successful that now, you have these, and it's kind of going off tangent, but you have, like, lose weight pills and all these different diet fads. And when in reality, it's if we can just be patient and be dedicated to a healthier lifestyle, we can have the body that we want, or at least a healthy body, the body
Yeah,
that
there's
protects
so
our
many times
health.
that I see before and after pictures of the people who have had surgery on themselves. And I'm not saying for everybody, but a lot of women, we have, a similar shape, I guess you could say. But a lot of the women that get the surgeries, I'm like, in their before picture, like you could have got that naturally. You could have worked out, you could have cleaned up your diet. You didn't have, you know what I mean? Because it's not going to be sustainable unless you change your diet. Even if you do get the surgery, you can still add weight. So like a lot of the time I'm like, that sucks, because it's like it's not sustainable. It's just like a band-aid. Like, okay, you might look beautiful, but like, how is that going to age? Are you going to really commit to changing
But it
your
doesn't matter.
lifestyle to keep this body?
But it doesn't matter because as a
They can just
society,
go get it
we want
fixed
we
again.
want instant gratification. Am I gonna have a beautiful corpse? That's what it is. That's what it is. How am I gonna look now? You have that. You have that. YOLO. And that's where we live. We live fast. We live for now. We don't live for tomorrow. That's why we don't invest. That's why we don't. Younger generations aren't looking at saving money. I'm living for today. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And yeah, it isn't guaranteed, but you know what I mean. That's why all of these companies are so successful when when trying to show you want to have this body, you want to look like this. That they fail to show us that the hard work it took that person to get that body. It doesn't matter because I saw the picture now, and I want that body tomorrow.
So, what's the moral of the story? I think for me, protect children. They're very vulnerable. keep an eye out for the children that you have around you. And there's not much you can do when it's not your child, but I think there is something we can do. I think for me, talking about this topic is very important, right? Like just even just talking about it, and to share kind of like, let's think about this, because I don't think we have real solutions. This is moving so quickly and it's so brand new that for me, some of the things that I do are a little too extreme for some people. And so I don't expect anyone to do this, but what's really helped me sometimes is to have a very like clear cut balance with my technology use and with my daughter's use. And I hate having to, take her on walks and go to the park and play and do all these. I don't hate it, but it's just like, I'm so tired. But it's either that or she's going to be in here bored, and then her energy is going to go towards something else because I'm not going to put her on a device, like I'm very much like I want her to keep playing as much as possible. So turn off your social media every once in a while. Take it off of your phone, like
you know what?
do things maybe that you might think like if I have it on my phone.
The alternative can be like put them in an extracurricular activity like dancing, martial arts, a sports team. Then they're distracted. It's literally the equivalent of giving them the phone. Now somebody else is taking care of them, teaching them how to play that sport, teaching them how to dance, teaching them that martial art. So for that hour or two, you can be doing whatever you need to do. But it really is going to ask us as parents to get off our butts and really be more intentional with
Model.
one of the things that I do with my girls is 7:30 comes along and all electronics are off. They can watch 30 more minutes of TV, but they're done. It's from 6 to 7. They get the electronics. I'm sorry, from 3 to 6 is when they get the electronics, and then after that, it's shut down because it can't be that excessiveness with the electronics, with the video games, with the phones, and so we plug them out. When having to police that, it becomes a little bit harder because when they're in your house, there's one way, and then when they're in their dad's or mom's house, it's another way, and so or where they were grandma, it's another way. So it's just as long as there's consistency and we keep at it. I mean, I think that is probably the best approach, in my opinion. And not everything's gonna work. You know what I mean? Try something different.
Yeah, you got to figure it out. Yeah, and it's different for everybody. I think a lot of the time I'm very careful when I speak about some of the things that I recommend, because I'm like, well, your situation lends itself to that lifestyle, because I do parallel parent. I take full advantage of when my child isn't with me. I go hardcore on myself, like hardcore. Like that's when I'm doing my self-care. And so so I think what you were saying was like, it takes a lot of modeling. Like we have to model it, because if I'm on my phone, I wouldn't have the guts to tell my daughter like get off technology and I'm on my phone. So I have to lead by example.
I like this conversation, guys. I think it's very important we have it. We're all parents, and I thought parenting was going to be completely different. And now that I'm living and doing it every day, what I thought before being a parent is totally different now that I am. So it's about learning and nurturing our kids, loving them, and being present. Ever since I've seen that Social Dilemma episode on Netflix, I've consciously tell myself, put my phone away and engage with my daughter. Do pretend play. And she's 3 years old and she's constantly asking for my attention. If I'm washing dishes, Mom, come play with me. And sometimes I do say, okay, let me finish dishes. But then I tell myself, the dishes can wait. I can do it later, I don't need to do it at that moment. Like she's growing up so fast and time's just going by. So I need to prioritize what I think is important.
And the other thing I wanted to say real quick is that a lot of us are so afraid that our kids are going to get hurt or that they're going to get dirty. But literally, that's how the brain works. Like, in order to assess danger or to protect ourselves, we need to learn to get hurt. We need to be able to feel pain. One thing that I really love about Muay Thai is that there's a huge emphasis on learning how to deal with pain so that your reaction, and your reaction meaning that if someone hits you, that you're that quick to counter because you know how to feel pain. And I think that's an extreme example. I'm not saying like put yourself through pain, but I think sometimes it's important, and we're losing that. We're going through the opposite extreme where it's like we have these devices at our fingertips, and we have technology at our fingertips that it's just easy, and we're tired. It's easy to just do that, but it's okay if kids get hurt. Like, they're so resilient, their bodies, their bones, they're still developing, they're so soft and squishy. Just kidding, that sounds weird, but you know, it's true. Like, if a child hits their head, like, it's literally still molding, like it's okay, versus if they hit their head later in life, you know, then it becomes like it could be a severe consequence. But when they're younger, their bodies are even meant to take on more because they're vulnerable, and Mother Nature knows that. And so in order to protect it, like, we're resilient, and we need to build up. I don't want to let it go. You know, in our past generations, we've always heard our parents like, we used to walk to school for miles in huaraches, and we used to really get beat. And so that was one extreme, and we had a lot of trauma from it. Okay. And so now we're going into the other extreme where it's like, my child can't get dirty, or we're buying our kids, I don't know why, designer clothing like Jordans or whatever, and then it's like, don't scratch your Jordans, don't. And it's like, that's a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. What do you, don't scratch your shoes because we got to upkeep the brand for everyone else who's watching. Like, that's causing more of a danger, because now your child isn't learning how to play and isn't learning how to scratch themselves and balance themselves and coordinate, because we're like, don't get hurt. And so I think that's one big one, that let's not forget, it's okay to get dirty, it's okay to get hurt. I'm not talking about put your child in danger. I'm just saying, you know, it's okay to fall. That's the part of life. Like, we're going to fall. And the more you fall, the more you learn to catch yourself before you fall next time. So
Kids could work on being a little less nasty, but I get your point.
Kids are great. And if they're not great, it's a reflection of us, because we're the ones bringing them up.
Are they though?
I think they are. I think they're beautiful. I think they're misunderstood. Every single child has always been misunderstood, and that's why we have like some of the traumas that we have.
I'm gonna keep them.
If we could just learn to see everybody with love and respect. That's how you change the world, is by treating children and teenagers with respect, because I know teenagers also get a bad rep, and it's like, they're a ball of raging hormones. What do you want from them? All right. Well, this was an insightful conversation. I hope you all liked it. I hope you enjoyed some of the things that we talked about. Please, please, please give us feedback either on our Instagram, follow us at Primas Podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us comments, give us any feedback, even if it's not what we want to hear. We want to hear it. Trust me. All right, everybody. Well, that's it. That's all we got. Any last closing remarks? Thanks, Robert, for being with us.
Well, thank you guys for inviting me.
Hey, bye guys. Primas are out.
Bye.
Bye.